screw this film. Screw it to the moon. I can't believe what they just pulled here. Like, F this film to the moon, you deceptive, scummy bait and switch asshats. I cannot believe what they did.
Don't you like weekly releases?
First and foremost, everyone, you guys need to know this. This is like consumer information that you deserve and should know going in. This is an incomplete film. And I'm not saying it's just like a cliffhanger, say like Empire Strikes Back or Infinity War. No. It is an incomplete film. They spend 2.5 hours building up to a very significant climax, and before the final conclusion, they cut it off. To be continued ends right there. You think I'm joking? I'm not. Like, it's like Christmas comes and there's no presents. It's like, I'm not kidding. I am insulted as a writer that someone would dare try and do this, right? I feel betrayed as a viewer of this film, and I am livid as a customer for not getting my money's worth, because there was no forewarning that this was a part one, and which really should be. And even then, if it was, say, a part one, it doesn't feel like a complete thing. Like think about Dune. Like, one of the biggest
part ones usually have an ending. It's like a littler ending, but they have an ending.
If you're a storyteller, you know that you need to give the audience something to feel like something was achieved. And so in Dune, there is a big fight, and the final penultimate kind of ending is them getting to safety, right? There is nothing here. Like, there is a build-up and then cut. I can't believe that they would have the gall to do this. Like, screw this film. Genuinely, this has, like, destroyed any grace that it was building up. Because the frustrating thing is, there was some interesting, even good parts to it, but it's robbed at the end. And there's an analogy that I've had that I can't believe fits this so well in the past. And it's been a question, like, can one thing ruin a good film? And my answer, yes. Yeah. The answer is yes. Yeah. And the way that I would propose is, like, imagine Lord of the Rings, right? And but my previous analogy was that the end of Lord of the Rings, they come to the gates of Mount Doom, and Aragorn, instead of what happens, chucks like a chicken, takes a dump, and the film ends. Everything else is the same, but that's the ending. Would that ruin the film? Yes, it would. But you know what would also ruin the film? They get to the gates of Mount Doom, and they cut. To be continued right then. That would friggin' ruin it too.
So Shad didn't know it was a part one. Neither did Nathan, and I didn't either. I had no idea. This was what, 2.5 hours, something like that. It was long. As you can see, Shad is a bit upset.
I'm pissed.
Which is fair. But if we start to get into the review portion,
we will get there.
We're front loaded with it is a part. It is a segmented. Series type.
We've got to warn people though, because I feel like we didn't know this.
We didn't know. Yeah, and it turns out that they had a small little release letting know it split into 2 parts. But
I found 2 articles of them mentioning this.
That's actually not the issue. It's the way they did it, okay? Because Dune was a part 1, and
you knew it was a part 1.
Exactly. One, they should be upfront. I did not
know about this.
To me, that's the bait. To me, this is very dishonest. Why I'm angry as a customer, because there's a number of things, right? Having a cliffhanger like this. The way they did it is so horrible. There's no satisfying thing that was achieved like they did with Dune. Look at it parts, right? Part 1 and 2. Even Hunger Games, right? Where at least it feels like you got a film. This one robs you of what you were expecting to be the ending, and then they could have led into it. And that's the frustrating thing, because the whole structure of the film was pointing towards a very simple but expected confrontation. And instead of having that confrontation, Miles Morales is actually somewhere else, and they have a bit of a blah, 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 and then it ends. And for the length of time that they had, then they could have easily have given that satisfying thing and then have the cliffhanger still.
So the reason why this is so terrible is because it's probably was like a 4-hour film, and they've just picked a point to cut in half. That's actually what has happened here. That's all they've done. They had like a 4-hour story, and they go, oh, maybe we should split this into 2. And they go, all right here, we'll just cut.
But the confrontation with, is it Spot, Mr. Spot, whatever, the Spot, right? Like, even if they didn't want him to be defeated, to have a bigger thing, they could have had a fight with him, give us something meaty for the end, and then have them lose to be continued, perfectly acceptable cliffhanger. they don't. It's like
I'm telling you, they just cut it
they
in
just
half.
cut-
That's it. That's
like,
all.
They build it up. And so the way that they did that is so insulting as a consumer because it's Christmas, no presents. Like they take you on a really interesting ride and do get you invested in the characters, and then they do this at the end. And I feel they were dishonest about it. There was no forewarning. The reason why this is also important for me is the kids that go and watch this, right? Kids are going to be particularly disappointed by this ending. Like genuinely so. And I feel the parents who thought they were going to take their kids to a fun time are going to the kids are going to be upset by this ending, and they will be fooled into because there's no forewarning. There's no, and so I know now that I'm not taking my kids to this because I just piss them off. Well, I'm using stronger language, but they'll get really annoyed by this ending because kids want some type of conclusion, or even if there's a cliffhanger, have something there to make it feel like a story.
I think the proof is in the pudding. If it's such a big, if it's not a big deal, why wouldn't they just put part 1 on it? Because obviously people are like, oh, well, it's a part 1. A lot of people don't like to watch things in a year.
And we've had so many part 1, part 2s, I think people are sick of it as well.
Because it's not even called, it's what is it? Miles Morales, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse? And they're like, that's
Across,
it.
yeah.
That's it. No part 1.
And so
It's
you're
part 1.
absolutely right. To me, this is dishonest and deceptive, and as a result, screw this film. That's one of the things that is making me livid. And like I said, I'm angry on 3 fronts, right? As a writer, I feel offended that someone would present this as a story. Like, this is breaking a cardinal sin for me as a writer, that I can't believe that I have the gall to do this, okay? For all the reasons I mentioned, you can still have cliffhangers. Cliffhangers are fine. You can even have part 1s and part 2 if you're honest about it, okay? And then, totally betrayed as a viewer, and as a customer, I feel robbed.
Well, shall we get into the review now? Of the actual...
It almost
of the
doesn't
part 1.
deserve it. I spit on this film.
I knew something was wrong. So, not talking about spoilers or anything, but in a general sense, we have a 20-minute opening. Genuinely, a 20-minute opening on Gwen. And I was like, that's kind of long. And then the intro credits roll. And then we had another half an hour just story of Miles. And I'm like, this is kind of slow. Why is this so slow? And then right at the end when they go, to be continued, I'm like, oh, right.
See, because I didn't mind that. I felt the character work and background stuff was building investment in the characters. And the thing that annoys me so much is that, look, there's going to be mild spoilers already. It's not going to be big things because we need to talk about the structure of the story to get this point right. They could have kept nearly everything the same. And then when Miles goes back to his own world, they do a bait and switch here as well. All they needed to have him do is go back to his world and desperate to save, the person he wants to save and have a confrontation with the bad guy. And like I said, the film would have been just as long if they did this change, and they could have him, he loses. He could still have the cliffhanger and have the story continue, but then something else happens and the film doesn't have an ending. It doesn't have, there's a build to a climax and nothing.
It was slow. Maybe if we watched part 1 and part 2 back to back, different story. But because we're 50 minutes in and it's
it is long, granted. I'm conflicted in terms of the actual quality of the story that was there because it's so undermined and betrayed by the ending. If you were to try and rate a full course meal with an entree, main, and dessert,
True.
How can you rate the overall quality when part of it is missing and it doesn't have the dessert? And so I don't think saying, the steak was good. It's like, no, hang on. There's something missing here.
I feel robbed. I at first initially I'm so confused with this film because initially when the whole Gwen stuff, I was like, I'm okay with a bit of character building because then if it makes me care more later in the ending of this film, then I'm okay with it. Although I feel like when the part 2 comes out, I want to get both and trim it down into one feature-length film because I feel like I could do that. The thing that annoyed me the most, though, was that at the very end, it was building to something.
Yeah.
It was building. I was getting excited. I was like, okay, we have a bit of a plot twist here, which then I want some resolution to feel satisfied.
It was a good plot twist. That was a good.
I
Plot twist.
thought that was
like that one.
clever. Yeah.
Again, that's the length of time that they could have just switched and have the conclusion. But
Yeah.
I even with the plot twist, I was like, all right, it's just going to be a longer film.
Yeah.
Give me the ending.
Yeah.
And then they don't.
That's the two things that annoy me. One is that I feel like when the second part comes out, that build-up's gone now completely. You've got to start it all over again. And what was it? Oh, yeah. How are they going to feel a whole another 2 hours? I feel like the next bit could be maybe like 40 minutes
They're
long.
just gonna
I think it'd be
But
an
like-
hour. I think it could be an hour.
They're not going to
But-
do that, though.
but-
They're going to make it 2 hours long.
They did like 50 minutes of just
Yeah. So
nothing
it's going to be...
story bit. So I think they can do it.
It annoys me because if this one felt long, then the second part's also going to feel long because it's not going to shorten the second part.
The problem is though, 50 minutes was a long time of nothing. Like it's story. So yeah, it's not like the worst thing in the world, but it's when you're sitting in a film and you go, "Ooh, this is kind of going on for a while. This is a lot." Then you know that it's a long film at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like that for the first like hour. Nothing was terribly interesting happening.
Yeah. So I think we'll just go to spoilers and try and share our thoughts on the film. Right now, my recommendation is do not watch this film. It doesn't deserve your money for what they did. And I am really upset, and you shouldn't care about it at all until they are willing to give you a complete film. I wait until this is going to be something there with a conclusion. It's an incomplete story. It's a crime against good writing, that what they did here, which is also frustrating because the parts that we're about to go on to, we're probably going to have a really interesting discussion. I feel that this film doesn't deserve that discussion because it's incomplete. I'm almost ready, happy to just end the review right here. Not worth your money. Screw this film. Done. That's where I'm almost at.
Well, we are kind of reviewing half a movie. What if the second part is just terrible? Like absolutely terrible and ruined.
I mean,
Game of Thrones season 8. What if it's that?
you know, they deliver half of it. Well, it's not even half. It's just an incomplete film. So we'll do an incomplete review.
Yeah.
Stay on watch. Nathan had a good point. What did you say, Nathan?
Oh, we're not as scummy as them.
So-
We'll give you the full meal here. Have it. Take it.
Oh, because it's so hard for me to just be willing to give the grace to give my attention to the meat of the film because of what they did at the end. I'm gonna try. It doesn't deserve it, does it? I'm still angry because if we were to try and look at everything else apart from the ending, for me, it's actually a very well-made film, except for the end. I see that's it. It's not a well-made film because of the ending. Everything else, you could say it's actually very well-made. You can even call it engaging. I'm not sure I liked it, and this could be my subjective opinion. I'm interested to hear your thoughts because of there is meta-narrative going on that I cannot ignore that's revolving around Miles Morales as a character and Spider-Man and Peter Parker. Did you guys notice any of this?
Yeah. There's a lot of subtle flipped in interesting ways.
Yeah. And so for people unaware of it, they probably will enjoy it, right? I couldn't get over some just questions that I'm having in my mind, like, there are so many Peter Parkers here, and you're telling me not one of them is siding with Miles. And Peter Parker is one of the most pure-hearted, do-good. I won't take, the lesser evil. I'll try and achieve no evil, And they basically are trying to get us to swallow that all the Peter Parkers are basically saying, you have to let your dad die. Not even far from trying. They're gonna lock him away to ensure his dad dying without even any hope of him trying to change it. And I'm just thinking, like, it really felt like the film was trying to say Miles Morales is your Spider-Man, yet they couldn't get away from it because even when he's like, capture Spider-Man, no one in the film knew who it was. Capture Miles Morales.
They're at least aware of that,
And is this just something I'm hung up on?
No, I'm the same because I kind of feel like when they go into all the other Spider-Men, they don't feel like any of them are Peter Parker. Like they only have one personality, which is the Spider-Man that they're from.
But you're right. Like, and they were all more comical, oversimplified versions of Peter Parker and even Spider-Man. Like the Scarlet Spider was a joke. And he's the one that's always commenting on what he's doing.
Yeah.
And it's like, They're making it feels like they're going out of the way to make them all a joke. And even the main Spider-Man, which is the one with the baby, is there mainly for a joke. And if he's meant to represent the iconic Peter Parker, he would have a bigger issue with what's going on.
Yeah.
But they give that to Gwen, and all the other Peters are just like, I'm not really seeing Spider-Man in this film.
I really liked seeing Spider-Man 2099. He's one of my favorites.
Hang on, which is that's future Spider-Man. Okay,
He wasn't evil or wrong. I stand.
Well, see, Tyranth mentioned this, and I was like, they made him to be the villain of the
but he's
film.
not a villain. Like
The film is presenting him as the villain, even though
what he's doing
there's an argument that
a very strong argument. If you don't do it, and all of the universe collapses, I mean,
well, it is based on assumption because there's a flaw with the narrative that's going on here. They're saying you can't break canon. This is appealing in this film that there is like a higher like authority on fate, that things that must play out. And one of the things that they try and set up in the film is that the way canon is broken is when someone from outside your universe comes in and changes something. Okay, so that is implying then that you should be able to have free will in your own universe to make the outcome what you would, best for you. But then they're trying to stop Miles from saving his father in his own universe. And I'm like...
That he wasn't supposed to be a Spider-Man, so he's already broken canon.
I guess that's what they're trying to say. But then, if it's already broken, why is it so important that his dad dies then? Then wouldn't it be free game?
Because then if he saves his dad, then the Spider-Man in that one doesn't have the motivation like all the other
He already has
Spider-Mans.
the motivation. Like, it was his uncle that died.
Yeah.
Like, there's no reason why his dad has to die here. And...
Do you know why, Shad? Because canon.
And it's unsatisfying because the reasons they try and establish the canon reason...
No. I follow canon wherever it may lead. So I follow canon.
Well, I'm just saying, one of the things they point out is how the officer, usually Stacy, has to die in Spider-Man Arc. But in the original Spider-Man film, there is no Officer Stacy to go die or save or whatever. It's only in the Amazing Spider-Man, which they reference, that has that. And then they all say, oh, it's canon. But you can... There's other canon that doesn't have that.
Yeah. For me, the reasons why they have to have Miles' dad die felt very weak. And they're going to ultimately undermine this, I think. Maybe they'll have the balls to still have him die, but I get the feeling that he's going to save his dad anyway, which kind of proves my suspicion right, that this adherence to canon, how do you know? This is what I mean about the future Spider-Man now feeling like a villain, because he's ultimately going to be proven wrong. That's what my suspicion is. Balls to them if they actually follow through, though. But no, who they're framing as a bad guy, who they're framing as the good people, and they're going to probably prove that you can save both in the end, which means he was a villain in the end. He was willing to let someone die for a greater good, and doing an evil to achieve a good is one of the worst philosophies you can imagine. It's, the ends justify the means narrative. And so... I don't like what they're doing with future Spider-Man. He was a hero. He's a good guy. That played on me as well. It was like, it seems like...
And the main villain, sorry to interrupt, the main villain is also like he's actually a good guy. When he's doing all those evil things, he's like saving people. He's like, you can live, and he's saving everybody.
Oh, dude, yeah, you're right. You're talking about...
he wasn't doing anything really evil.
When he was robbing, he's like, sorry, I got no other work. Yeah. I got to rob you. It's my first time. I'm sorry. Like, he was also a good guy.
A very New York.
Yeah.
So, I liked Gwen Stacy in this. I think she had good motivations, characterizations, conflict. And the film does conflict really, really well in terms of you feel what the characters are wanting, and they have like ways of showing what the characters are thinking about. Especially when Miles Morales comes back, he thinks it's his universe and is trying to save his dad, and they have all the flashbacks going on around him. This is actually, that's brilliant cinematic storytelling, okay? Doesn't redeem the film for what they did at the end. That's what I mean. All grace and positive thoughts are like, what they did at the end. I can't believe it.
What would you give it out of a 10? Like, if you
ignoring the ending,
ignoring the ending.
I have to consider both. Ignoring the ending, I can't. Pretending it had an ending, and it was a complete film, I'd almost be around 7 out of 10 territory for it, right? As it is, it's it's almost not worth. It's not a film. It's not a complete film. It doesn't deserve a rating. Don't watch it.
To be very clear, if it wasn't clear at the start, we're not talking about like part 1s and part 2s. We're talking about, first off, the marketing around it doesn't say anything about it being part 1 or part 2.
To bait people in because they know people would be annoyed. But even at least be honest, and you know what you're paying for.
Yeah.
Now you're paying for a complete film and they don't deliver it, so screw them.
And even if they did it as a part 1 or part 2 in a traditional sense, they have a sort of mini ending. So it's kind of left on a cliffhanger, but you feel like at least you got a story. With this, it's not. It's like
there's no mini.
There's no
mini
cut
ending.
to black. That's it.
There's no finale. It was like building up to, okay, we're about to get to the end game and the good bit, and then they stop it there. And so as a viewer, you feel robbed because you're like, oh, hang on, you had my emotions for a moment, and now you've just said, all right, you can leave now. The end. It's like having a bedtime story and then being like, just doing some world building, and then being like, all right, good night, and you're like, hang on, you just set this all up. Come on, finish it off.
I'm not kidding. Like you can compare it to so many films. Star Wars: A New Hope, right? They're leaving the Rebel base to fight the Death Star. Cut.
Yeah.
End. That's what
is
this
that
film
level.
is.
Yeah.
It's this level of stupid. That's how insulting what they did is. Okay.
What would you rate it?
I would be the same with Shad. Like, if it was a complete film, I would go as far as a 7.5 maybe. But with the ending, I feel very low.
Well, it's kind of hard for me to judge it because, like, I wouldn't have watched it if I had known that it was a part 1 or part 2. 'Cause
Me neither.
I'm a binger. I want to watch all of it at once.
And this is why they did it. They went out of their way to deceive the audience. Like, as a reviewer, we would have probably watched it to review, knowing what it was. As just a regular person watching it, I wouldn't have gone out of my way to see it if I knew it was a part 1. I'd just say, all right, I'll wait until they both come out. And they know people would do that. Screw them for trying to deceive people then. Because now what you have is worse, is really pissed off viewers for what you did.
Without the ending, I'd probably say it's hard to put a number on it because it's not like it's bad or the story's bad or anything like that. It's just it felt very slow in some areas, especially
so
the beginning.
long and slow in certain areas. Like when it starts, like it will pick up for a moment and then go back again to like just talking
it
dialogue.
It actually does that. It'll like you get action and all of a sudden you're back to that slow for like 20 minutes. And oof.
And then you get some action again because they know you're falling asleep, and then they'll go back to talking.
And I guess I should also do another caveat because that was me just trying to rate the film in isolation just on its quality if it had a good ending. As a Spider-Man fan of the true Spider-Man, Peter Parker, I'm probably more in like 4 out of 10 territory because like I don't. Again, there's a meta-narrative here of trying to prop up Miles Morales at the expense of Peter Parker Spider-Man, which annoys me.
I don't know. I felt because the Peter Parker in that is supposed to be the Tobey Maguire one, right?
Closely, there are some canon things that are not perfectly accurate, but is the closest one.
But it's supposed to be like
a close approximate. Yeah.
So I feel happy in a way that he's got a kid and he's being a dad and he's just having like I don't know, man. I like that.
This film actually confirms it's not the same one because we saw images of the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man.
Yeah, but I thought that was because that's why when he looked at Peter looked away. Like, yeah, that's what happened. He didn't want to look.
Nah, something that was like I think it was looking away because it was something similar. No, that, like if they saw the live action version of him, he's just another version. They are two separate because they always appear in their animation or live action, even when they go to another universe.
That would mean they would have to have Tobey Maguire for the whole film. They're not going to do that.
Exactly.
It was showing all of the traumatic events.
It's also confirmed in the first one. There's actually canon in his backstory that doesn't match up to the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. There's slight differences. I can promise you that.
Yeah, but they were showing all of the traumatic events.
To bait switch you, just say
nostalgia.
Have some nostalgia, Tyranth.
One.
Yeah, have
Miles
some nostalgia.
Morales is like, looks up, sees what happened with Tobey Maguire one, and goes, Peter. And Peter goes, looks away.
I need to watch the first one. I know there are specific things that in the animated, like with the kid in this one, that is inaccurate to the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man films. He's not the same one.
Well, this is the canon, you see, Shad. This is the new canon.
Rue that logic.
There's not really much to say. Like,
half
a film.
There's it depends how deep you want to go into it because there's a lot of things to comment on about the way they go about doing things, animation, and story elements, story beats. We're not going to go through the entire story beat by beat. It doesn't deserve that level because it's incomplete.
Like at the end, you'll be mad, like how we were.
we all scoffed right at the end.
Yeah.
Like we were all watching and we're like, okay, we're up to something. All of a sudden, to be continued. We went.
I forget what it did. It was something like, that's criminal. I said to you guys, like, I couldn't believe what they did.
I was waiting for, like in the Simpsons movie, there's a joke where they say to be
Yeah.
continued immediately. I was waiting for that, and then it didn't come, and then I slowly built up more and more anger towards them. It annoys me because of how much I love fan service.
Mhm.
And when they were doing the multiverse type thing, there was a lot of fan service.
There was like there's an animated Spider-Man one that isn't as old as the classic, but I think it's the Spectacular Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And you even see him in there.
Yeah, he
like-
shows up and does the little thing too. It was
and he was just his animated version, and so there is a lot of that. But there, like I said, a lot of them were just played off as jokes. We don't see a proper serious Peter Parker. And what's interesting, right? In terms of the beats of the Spider-Man story, they hijacked classic ones from Spider-Man, gave it to Miles Morales, but they did it very well. Like his life is getting impacted by him being Spider-Man. He's having trouble, with schoolwork and his family life, and that's one of the most important elements of the Spider-Man story. Is that great sacrifice, great responsibility. You're doing the right thing, even if it makes your life worse, because you have the power to do good, and it's your responsibility to do it. That's such a core, important theme to Spider-Man, and they did have that in spades with both Gwen and Peter Parker, and so that gets the feel. Sorry, not Peter Parker, Miles Morales, right? That gets the feels, right? That gets you're getting invested as a result because you see these characters that you're starting to appreciate what they're going through, and then you don't get an ending. Like.
There's really actually not much to say because it's just half a film. Like, you can't really judge it on its merits because it's. I have to really get across this point. It's not an ending. It's just you're watching in the middle of the film and the power goes out. It's like that.
Yeah.
Yes.
I also just realized it's been 3 years since the first one came out, and at the start of that one, they did a whole let me get you caught up with this. They do a whole comic book thing. And the start of this one, they do that again with every other Spider-Man, and then we're going to get a part 3, basically, when they're going to do the whole thing. The first 15 minutes going to be, let me catch up to what I am as Spider-Man. Like, there's so much retreading, and especially in this, I feel like there's important discussions had more than once, especially with Miles and his parents.
It's like one every 5 minutes.
So like, they always have a conversation about your future or career or who am I.
So they didn't lean into the backstory things as much as they did the first one. It was there now and then, but then they kind of cut short or different. I did have a question. Like, to me, Gwen pining after Miles Morales so hard in this film, like missing him so deeply, didn't feel justified or set up in the first film. She just kind of ended up liking him and, impressed by his gumption and ability to thing. And then, but now it's like, what will I do without him? And I was just thinking, hang on, the previous film didn't really bring it that far with their relationship.
No, and I think part of their reasoning would be at the start of this one, they have like her little arc of her being alone, thinking about him a lot.
I mean, I get him pining after her. He had hot spur the whole time. That made sense. But her after him, I was just like, didn't really see in the first film. Small little thing. And if you take the film just as its own self-contained thing, it wouldn't really, because it's applying from the previous one. But anyway, I had that little, eyebrow raise. Now, something that our audience is going to want to know is how woke is the film? And not very, like, if you're not paying attention, you probably won't notice things, but there are the subtle digs. The thing is, though, some of the digs actually were kind of more in line with the character, and so I didn't have it. So this reminded me of another kind of weird criticism. A lot of the other universe Spider-Man seemed overly exaggerated stereotypes, and for, Hollywood, which are very sensitive about cultural appropriation and stuff, there's certain cultures, they do not mind stereotyping too. Holy crap. Well, again, if you ever seen Miles Morales, there's a comic book called Miles Morales Thor. Stereotyping in that is insane. So I guess it's par for the course maybe for Marvel. Because there's a character who is punk Spider-Man and is this British punk rocker anti-establishment guy. And so they use his character to drop anti-capitalist and fascism bad kind of stuff. But that's about as far as it goes. And I think it's in line with this character, so it didn't bother me too much.
he was annoying at first, and then there was some things I was like, okay, I kind of like him. I can get used to him. But then, spoilers, he just leaves.
Yeah, but
He just gave up.
because he's
like, "I'm
against
out."
authority, man. And
But he
so-
was with them for like how long? Like
Yeah,
they were
yeah.
hanging out with Gwen half the time, and then he's like, "Oh, I don't like this. Actually, I'm gonna head out."
And so, to give the film credit, though, to me, there was actually a scene that I would consider anti-woke. And if it has kind of both perspectives, to me, it balances out, and therefore I'm okay with. And the scene that, I'm not sure if you guys, it was when the parents are being interviewed by the, I don't know, she's
Career counselor.
or entry person for university. And she says, okay, we'll do it this way. You are an immigrant and you've been struggling against oppression. And then I was like, I'm Puerto Rican. They're American. And
This is in the film, by the way. This is genuinely
this is in the film. And you know, something about it to the dad. And he's like, I'm actually got a good job.
Yeah.
And
Got an apartment.
you grew up in a, she's like, you grew up in a rough neighborhood. And he's like, no, I got a good job, a good apartment.
I'm becoming the police captain next week.
And it actually kind of felt like, was this film kind of making fun of the whole, you know, woke, you are a victim if you come from certain areas or have certain backgrounds. And the mum and dad are like, no. And actually, I really like the mum and dad in this. I think the mum and dad relationship, especially with the dad, them together, and just as characters, were great. And that scene actually felt a bit like, you know, anti-woke because they were pushing back against stereotypes where you have this, you know, person just making assumptions about someone's background based on the color of their skin and where they come up, and then the film was like, no, not that.
I think they did the parents really well. I also like there was one of the parts in this movie I actually really enjoyed and wish we kind of got more of was when Miles was with his dad as Spider-Man and they're chasing Spot.
That was a good
That
scene
was
as
really
well.
fun because you could see that like his dad was off saving people. He was trying to, you know, pretend that he's not his son, and it was good.
And there was actually one line that did make me chuckle where the dad's like, I don't know what to do, and then Miles in it is like, maybe he could get off his ass a bit. That's what annoys me. All the good parts of the film just make the end more enraging. And so
It was a good twist, though, because the end and the twist before the end is, I liked that twist. I thought that was good.
And it was well justified that.
Yeah.
And so Miles was bitten by a spider, not from his universe. And they set up that the organization Future Spider-Man has is capturing anomalies, people in other universes that don't belong. They get scanned and their DNA reveals the universe that they're from. And then they get forcibly sent back to that universe. The plot evolves that Miles, like they're trying to say he has to let his dad. Miles figures out that his dad is going to die because all the captains of police forces have died in all these other Spider-Man realities, and that his dad is going to become the captain of the police force means that if his reality is following along in line with the other ones, his dad is most likely going to die. He wants to stop that. That will break canon. And Future Spider-Man's answer, like his logic is, he feels that if you break canon, your entire universe has the likelihood of dying.
Well, he doesn't feel that way. He has evidence
He-
for it.
When he went to the other,
They also have evidence of being able to stop it. The Indian Spider-Man, he says,
Yes. The difference being
the risk is too great.
One
yeah.
was a little blob down there that they
Yeah.
could stop early. The other one was his like entire thing got erased.
Yeah.
There's different levels to this.
There is. And so I can see that, you know, from his mind, it doesn't justify the risk. Yet still, I think the counter to that is that this is Miles making his own choices in his own universe, and therefore that should be canon. But then the answer, like, is not canon. But then
He's not supposed to be
where's the
Spider-Man,
hole?
no.
What, he got bit a long time ago. Why isn't there a hole in his universe? It seems pretty stable. Another contradiction.
I think it's dependent upon how big of a
Really?
a thing
No
you break.
Spider-Man, and there's a new Spider-Man. That's that's bigger than saving
But if
someone's
the
life.
Spider-Man dies and then one gets replaced with another Spider-Man, functionally things are kind of going the
but
same
then
way.
there's the one that Miles is stuck in when there is no Spider-Man.
And look how
So-
big of an issue.
And I'll finish my explanation how he gets there. So now he wants to get back to his universe. All the spider people are trying to stop him, but he remembers there's the forcible sending him back. So he goes to that sending back thing. It scans his DNA, but because it was bit by a spider from another universe, it scans
The wrong DNA.
it counts that it thinks it's from the universe the spider came from, and he gets sent back. The film is established that you think is in his home universe, and they have a bait and switch, which is a good reveal. This is a good twist where, oh, he's actually not in his universe now. He's in a universe where Spider-Man never existed. He was never bitten because the radioactive spider disappeared. And he runs into a version of himself as a criminal. He's the Prowler. And again,
Such
you
a
think
terrible name.
it's a classic character,
Yeah,
the
it's such
Prowler.
a bad name.
But
though.
this is a negative film because it's building up to something, confrontation with himself, and then nothing. End of film. It's over. It's outrageous. Yeah.
Is that everything?
So ending off on the whole kind of is it woke, is it not? Not really. It's kind of balanced out. There's a thing there are some woke lines. To me, there's an anti-woke moment in it, and it's not very overt. There's not heaps of it. And so nothing really else worth mentioning on that front. So back onto story elements. Like I said, the parents were good. Gwen, her relationship. That's kind of where
she chases Spot from a few universes and stuff.
Going back on the kind of subtext kind of that there, it felt very to me it was noticeable how much they were trying to establish Miles Morales as, this is going to be your Spider-Man and you'll be happy.
Did they?
Well, by making all the other Peters basically on.
I don't know, because when I see Peter Parker with the baby, I'm like, yeah, that one's my Spider-Man. So I didn't feel that at all.
I feel that they were again making him a bit of a joke, and he could have been on board with Gwen's moment. To me, should have been Peter as strongly, we're of the same opinion that Gwen was, that no, this is bad. I thought we were supposed to be the good guys and stuff. So that kind of me. And the other thing is, Marvel is desperate for people to have Miles Morales as Spider-Man, and they try to make him even better than Spider-Man. He has more powers and stuff, and
associated with Marvel.
Yeah. And so Miles he's got more power than regular Spider-Man. He can turn invisible. He's got the electric thing. In the comic books, he can now make a bioelectric sword with that electricity. He's just trying to make him. You'll like it. We'll give him more powers and more powers and more powers. And then there is that moment in the film where the film itself can't help but acknowledge that he isn't really Spider-Man. Spider-Man is Peter Parker. Miles Morales is a derivative of Peter Parker. It's not an original character. He can be a fun character like, the first Spider-Verse film, and is very effective in this one, but is never going to replace Peter Parker.
Even the Spider-Women aren't Spider-Women. They're like Spider-Men. They call themselves Spider-Men as well when they're all chasing and running around. So even then, they're not included in a way.
I'm serious. How many Spider-Man films have we got? Give me a good Superman film, please.
We've got 10 now.
Of what?
Spider-Man. Yeah.
I'm sure it's more than that.
If you count older ones, yeah.
Yeah, man, it's a lot, man.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah.
So that's about as much as I feel bothered talking about in regards to there's more if it actually was a complete story that we would want to break down, but it doesn't deserve that attention for what it did. Everything that we talked about, even the positives, are robbed of what they did because one thing can ruin a film. And for me, there is definitely that thing in it.
It was sad because they were going some really good places with, saving many people versus one, and whether or not you can do everything, and responsibility and power and friendship and family.
And it was hitting the right beats as well, like with the Spider-Man themes of sacrifice. Really well. And then there is a good philosophical question to talk about the mentalities that go, but we can't really have that conversation because we don't know the conclusion. We don't know what the film is ultimately trying to say about, choosing the greater good, or is there a way to try and never concede on on what is right and try and save everyone? The film doesn't have a conclusion. It doesn't have a beat to explain that, so we can't really comment or have that conversation. Kind of annoying. So, final conclusion is, once again, screw this film. Don't watch it. It doesn't deserve your money for what they did. And stay on watch.